Hello.
Hi.
My name is Susan Saxton, and today is April 30th, 2024. We are in the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum, and we're speaking with John Temple. John, would you please state your name and spell it for us?
John W. Temple, T-E-M-P-L-E.
Thank you. First, tell us when and why you came to Boca Raton.
I got involved after Stanford Business School in the large-scale community development business in California. And we bought big pieces of property, turned them into communities, and kind of developed the state-of-the-art in community development, in my opinion, was founded in California. So we did a lot of projects in California. They're in my book if you want to follow them. And so we had a lot of experience. And when I say we, I mean Chuck Cobb and I, because I want to include Chuck in this, because we worked together from the very start in California. He then was recruited prior to me to come to ARVIDA. And then we did a lot of very large projects in California community development, studied the Irvine Ranch, studied them all, and we'll come back to that a little later, I think. Yes. And so when ARVIDA was a public company, Arthur Vining Davis sold a 60% interest to the Pennsylvania Company. Pennsylvania Company was owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, which went into bankruptcy. So while its subsidiary, the Pennsylvania Company, and ARVIDA were not in bankruptcy, ARVIDA was a public company, we had to kind of live through this period of time where the banks kept trying to get a hold of us. And
when was
they
that,
resisted
John?
that.
Sorry.
That would have been, I came to Florida, Chuck came in 1972, and I came in 1975. I think that's right. When he came. And we were still talking back and forth, and he kept trying to get me to come out and help him out, and so I did. So I came in 1975 to Miami as the chief financial officer, but then he gave me a whole bunch of other responsibilities. One of them was not Boca. Although as the chief financial officer, I was very involved in what was going on at Boca. So go ahead.
When did you come up to Boca Raton?
I came up to Boca Raton I came to Florida in 1975, and I moved to Boca Raton in 1979.
Okay. And give us a little bit of history of ARVIDA in Boca Raton.
Well, ARVIDA in Boca Raton started with Arthur Vining Davis, who bought the Boca Raton Hotel and Club, which was started in 1926. And Arthur Vining Davis, I think Arthur Vining Davis loved real estate. He first went to the Bahamas because he was chairman of Alcoa Aluminum. And when they had to divest themselves of Alcan, the aluminum company in Canada, he liked to buy land, but he didn't like the exchange between the U.S. dollar and the British pound. So he bought the better part of the island of Eleuthera, and then when that changed, then he just started buying land in Florida. Bought huge chunks in Dade County, bought 20,000 acres of land, which is now Weston, 10,000 of it's Weston. Then he bought all this land, assembled all this land in Boca Raton, and bought the Boca Raton Hotel.
Now, you said your position with ARVIDA was chief financial officer. Did that change when you came to Boca Raton?
Yeah, I took over Boca Raton. I think Chuck was the CEO, and I think I became the president. And my predecessor here went up to be the chief financial officer of the Pennsylvania Company, which basically controlled us.
Okay. What was the importance of the Boca Raton Hotel with ARVIDA when you arrived?
It was really a landmark that we used to promote. We had so much land in Boca Raton. We wanted to do community development, And we used it as a focal point to developing all the rest of our communities. The hotel was important to us, not because of owning it and running it. It was to control the club and control it being quality, because that reflected on all the communities that we did. So that kind of answers that question, maybe. But there's a lot more to it.
Oh, I'm sure. And I know you mentioned the growth cap earlier. Did that still have an effect on ARVIDA's business?
Not at the time I got here.
Okay.
But it was a suit that was filed in 1972, as I understand. It went on for 4 years. There was an anti-growth element here, big time. And, but we had so much land here that was not in the city of Boca Raton that when I came here, there was this lawsuit going on, which ARVIDA won. But as I always look at it and say, they maybe lost the battle. They maybe won the war, but they lost the battle, because there was, what we did is when I came here in '75, Boca West had been just started. Broken Sound was in an approval process. There was a very anti-growth movement in town, just in general, so my concentration was on getting Boca West going and finally finished. My emphasis was also on Broken Sound. I came right in the middle. There was no plan unit development ordinance in Boca Raton at the time. And we had to form one, which was a very difficult process. So I ended up in the middle of that. We got it formed, we got it solved, and it's become a beautiful community, I think. And we focused, because of our past experience and the consultants that we knew and the planning people we knew from our California days and studying the Irvine Ranch and et cetera, we said we want to make this into these big pieces of land into quality communities. So we concentrated on the big stuff. We did build Estancia, Paseos, et cetera. We also needed a shopping center. Shopping center had started, just barely. We had Pennies. When I inherited Pennies, I inherited Burdines, and that was a big risk. And we had to make that all work and get town center going, and we did. The Park of Commerce you talked about later, and I'll tell you how important that was.
Yeah.
One of the good things that the predecessors of ARVIDA did, which would have been, Stockton Wiley Davin, I guess, or Arthur Vining Davis, I don't know, but they sold a big piece of land to IBM. And we had a couple thousand acres out there, and we sold a big part of it to IBM, which is where they started that beautiful building out there at the time, and developed the personal computer, which you have a video on, which I think is really, really nice here for the historical purposes. And so at the time I came here, we had like a three-legged stool, which is very unbalanced. We had resorts, meaning the hotel. We had second homeowners, and we had whatever else was there. We had to bring industry in here. IBM really helped us do that, and there were so many things that came with IBM. That there were, companies that supplied them, chip business. We had the university, which was a very good engineering school. I think it was only a 2-year school when I got here with 8,000 students. We had Lynn University, where we needed to have people to, support IBM, companies like that. And we spent a lot of time recruiting bigger businesses down here. One of the first companies we brought down here that was just before my time, was Lynn Insurance Company, and you know that name very well. And I also, I got very involved with the university, and then Dick Schmidt's father got very active in that, got very active in banking here.
Right, Florida Atlantic University.
That the Schmidt name and the Lynn name are all over the place, and been wonderful contributors to this community.
So you would say that the ARVIDA Park of Commerce really was an important part of...
Very important part. The deficiency we had with the Park of Commerce is that the city was so no growth oriented at the time that when I inherited it, basically, it was a 20-acre minimum for companies going in there. You had a 20-acre. Well, a lot of companies wanted smaller pieces. Again, this anti-growth element existed still, although this was a lot of this that we did out west, Boca West, that kind of thing was in the county, and town center was in the county. So we worked with the city, and then finally, to talk about politics a little bit. We were always very nice to, in the past, before me. Not that I'm a nice guy, but I get along with everybody. I got along with Dorothy Wilkins fine, But there were some other people there we had a problem with. As nice as you were to them, you couldn't get them going. So we helped the Chamber of Commerce form a business development organization. And I would go to, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I think it builds into the story.
Time-wise, when was that you got involved with the chamber and the board, the business development?
Pretty early on. After 75.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, we still got these people here, I used to call it, they're the ones that want to raise the Camino Real Bridge and keep it raised. And not that we were developing out there, we were developing out west where we could deal with the county, which is much more reasonable to deal with. So we got the Chamber of Commerce, got them to form a PAC, which we supported. They're still active in promoting business here because we needed to put a fourth leg on that stool, steady it, and bring more people that worked and lived here, rather than just being second homeowners or resort guests or conventioneers or whatever. And so we promoted business, but we were restricted in that by the city, which was the limitation that we had.
Tell us a little bit about buying ARVIDA from Penn Central. Why the urgency, and what was the motivation?
Motivation was that Penn Central came out of bankruptcy. We were then controlled by the Pennsylvania company, that 60% that was bought in 1958, I think. In 1958, Arthur Vining Davis went public. And then he sold that 60% interest, and I don't remember exactly when it was, to the Pennsylvania company. Pennsylvania company was a non-rail subsidiary of the railroad, okay? And they were in the pipeline business, they were in Six Flags, and they had ARVIDA. And being a public company is a difficult thing for a real estate company. Being public is like a development company is very, very difficult. I mean, they're home builders that do well at it. They're big, Lennar, et cetera. But it's not a good vehicle for it. Also, once we got freed up from the bankruptcy, we were kind of we had a lot more flexibility. Also, we were profitable. We were making money, but we were having to pay taxes. And I was a CFO, and my partner Chuck was very financially oriented, as were other people in the company, and said, this is crazy. we should be we should end up owning at least 80% of it, so that we could use the losses. We could use the losses from the Pennsylvania Railroad, which when it went bankrupt, it left a whole bunch of losses. So why should we be paying taxes when if we bought 20% more? So we went out to the public and tendered for that other 10%, 20% to get us to 80, which is the threshold. I hope I'm not getting too technical here, but people that understand finance will understand this. And we ended up getting, because it's a public company and stock was kind of iffy, they got another 10, so they got 90. So it went from 60, 70, 80, 90, 70, 80, made that threshold when they got 90, at 90 to 100. And Penn Central the Pennsylvania company had some new management that they brought in who said, look, we might as well just own this whole thing because we can squeeze out the other 10%. So they squeezed out the other 10%. We became 100% owned. That was fine. We missed a lot of important, ARVIDA missed a lot of important real estate opportunities, I might add, to do some acquisitions and things that I won't. If you want me to get into that later, I can, but I don't. I think it's maybe not necessary for what you want to do here. So we ended up being 100% owned, and then in Chuck, my partner Chuck, went up to spend a lot of time with the Pennsylvania company, and I was kind of left to run everything else here. We were getting Weston started, which was a big challenge. It's not Boca, but it's 10,000 acres. I was busy. Okay, in 1983, kind of to back up a little bit, talking about the Boca Hotel, we sold the hotel, but because we didn't need to own it. We didn't need to own the asset, but we needed to control the management. So we sold it with a long-term management contract. We sold it with control of the club membership because you couldn't be a member there unless you were a guest of the hotel or you were. And we had a requirement: you had to be a member of an ARVIDA community. You had to be on ARVIDA property. Now, whether that was being involved with the town center, getting that going, or buying in Broken Sound or whatever. And that was very important to us because it gave us a big edge on everybody else. So that's why we kind of led the charge in developing things like Boca West, Broken Sound, etc.
Okay. So how do you feel that ARVIDA impacted the shaping and the history of Boca Raton?
Well, I think one of the things we did, that's really a good question. One of the things we did is the city is kind of a hodgepodge. Downtown we had some land down there, but downtown was a little bit of a hodgepodge. Wasn't well planned, in my opinion. Didn't have enough land downtown to really help do a Century Village or something like that. So we concentrate, as I said, we concentrated out west, and at the time we got, Penn Central decided they wanted to really concentrate on their pipeline business. Six Flags was over here doing something else. They owned 6,000 acres in California, which we had looked at when I was in California, and they didn't have it planned right. And we didn't want to have anything to do with it. We kept trying to force it on us. So we became 100%. We finally made a deal with them to absorb that. So that became part of ARVIDA. So back to the question of why did
impact the shaping of Boca Raton and its history.
And its history. So when we did the leverage buyout, and so we sold the hotel in '83 to a syndicator who, VMS, Van Camden, Morris and Stone out of Chicago, and they just went out and did public offerings of these limited partnerships, a very tax-oriented thing. And but we still ran the hotel and we still controlled the club. But they paid too much for it. They paid my asking price. I'm a real estate guy. So they paid my asking price. They also took a bunch of fees up front, and it wasn't working. And they only had one golf course, and they were dependent upon Boca West, and then early on in Broken Sound, but mostly Boca West for their excess golf that they needed. The convention center was not working well. They needed more convention space. So it was starting to, it was in trouble. And we didn't want to see it in trouble. So they came to see me, the limited partners of the partnership. It was a public partnership. The limited partners came to me and said, gee, we think this management's doing a horrible job, and blah, 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 blah. I said, look, the same guys we had, they're doing a great job. It's just that you overpaid, you overborrowed, and if you want to blame anybody, blame me. So anyway, went back and forth. When I ended up becoming a general partner with some of the guys that represented the limited partnership, and we got the debt reduced and got it back on track. And then we got another golf course, talked them into finally getting another golf course, which they've now given up, but that's another story.
So time frame for that, what was the time frame for what you...
83, we sold it in 83. Okay. And I'm sorry, we sold it in 83. In September of 83, I sold the hotel. We used that money to help us develop all of our communities out here, okay, and put a lot of streets in, roads in. When you first came here, 84, I mean, Glades Road was a 2-lane road with no landscaping. Again, back to what did we change? We made, even when it was a 2-lane road, we made sure that, that the town center mall had landscaping in front of it. We added that requirement to Glades Road, which is a county road, so that it could be beautified. And for all the other communities, most of which we built, Boca West, you name it, Estancia, we did the same thing. We added that to their association, so we knew the county wouldn't take care of those roads, and we were really into, making it look good. So how did that affect the city? So the city came up later with some pretty good people who said, "Boy, we're looking pretty grim down, in the downtown area. We're looking pretty bad, and ARVIDA's looking pretty good. Their roads and their, the way they landscaped it and the way they maintained it and the way they made sure it was maintained. And so we helped the city really improved it. And Haggerty, who was the planning, Bob Haggerty was, he could be tough at times, but he and I worked together, and he says, look, we need to do this. And I'm trying to think of who owned the lumber store here up on, I can't think of his name. And he got on the city council and he says, gosh, we got to make this look more like look what ARVIDA's doing out here, out, on the other side of 95. And so that's started a beautification program. And I think the city is really, looks so much better from that. But the downtown is still a challenge. But a lot of things that happened, and it's really grown like crazy,
Well, that's the end of my questions. Do you have anything else to add that you want to make sure that?
Well, you asked me about why did we end up buying it, and how did we end up with Disney? Okay, and what happened to ARVIDA? And I want to add a little bit to the Park of Commerce. Again, you can fit it in however you like. But the Park of Commerce now, today, one of the good things about today is it's now called Broken Sound. They changed the name, ARVIDA Park of Commerce. A little sad, but that's okay. It was time. 20-acre minimums was a real problem trying to recruit business here. So one of the things that they've now done, which I didn't do, which I should have done, we tried to do it, just couldn't get it through, is they now have a mixed use understanding out there. And they've done a good job with it, changed the name to Broken Sound. And I can come back and tell you where Broken Sound came from, because I get asked that all the time.
Oh, do please.
Okay, but let me come back to that. I'll finish with the Park of Commerce. So what we knew from our experience from before and doing a lot of other things everywhere, whether it's Weston or whether it was the Irvine Ranch in California or the Gainey Ranch, I mean, whatever, all the other things we did. We learned how to put curvilinear roads in to break up the checkerboard kind of development that had been done pretty standard throughout the years. And also, I spent a lot of time with the universities and both the state, now called Palm Beach State University, FAU. I was chairman early on of the foundation, and then Chuck Schmidt followed me, and some other people who were older than I was, but guys I really liked, and they made a great contribution to this community. And then I worked. The university had 8,000 students. Look at what we have now. And then I started the research park as after I left. Again, I'm bouncing around, but and you can regroup this any way you want, because I tend to kind of be that way. But when we bought a solo hotel in '83. We had enough money to make sure we got everything done. We then had an opportunity to buy the company. It was now owned privately now, with the Bass Brothers in Texas, were the main.
How did they come in?
They came in because we were competing against a big insurance company, which one, I'd had some experience with them. Chuck had some experience with them. We didn't want to be owned by them. We didn't want to work for them. And we said, look, this is the opportunity to buy this thing ourselves. And we know all the properties, and we know how to use the tax advantages of Penn Central. So we bid against them, and we didn't have any money.
Bid against the insurance company.
We bid against the insurance company. And one of the ex-guys from the insurance company was running Penn Central at the time. I won't get into names. And that was a little bit of a tough one. So we went to the Bass Brothers, and I had all my sheets spread out. The guy's name was Richard Rainwater. I refer to him as, get emotional, as our angel. Excuse me.
That's okay.
But they put up the seed money. They made sure that Chuck and I had everything that we had in our lives, money-wise. And we did a leverage buyout of the company in 1980. In September of '83, we bought it, and then in '84, we were approached by Disney. We closed it in the end of '83, and we lost a lot of our some of our good people, but because we just had a skinny organization back, and we had to give up all these acquisitions that we were doing. I can get a whole story about that. It's kind of in my book. So we, Chuck and I looked at each other and said, look, we had a skinnies down. We had about a dozen of our guys as partners with us, and some of them said, I don't know if you guys are going to make it. You're really highly leveraged. So we had, for over a long period of time, assembled some critical pieces of property that we knew about that we called crown jewels. One of them was the strip of land on the west end of the golf course at the hotel. Another one was actually where I live now, which was Harbor Point. That was a Coast Guard station. And other pieces that we weren't going to develop, but we knew were marketable because we were community developers. You know, they were too small to turn into major communities or anything like that. So we started selling those off. We had started, after we sold the hotel, we incorporated the Cabana Club, which was down where the Addison is now. We had 1,000 feet of beach, and we started that development. That was a large capital investment deal for a couple of guys who were scraping around and borrowed a couple $100 million. And we said, look, you know, we got to be careful that we don't lose this thing. And couple of our guys thought they had other opportunities. They were all good guys. Yeah. So we started selling off those pieces. We sold the piece. They built apartments. And now they've built condos. And then we sold off, Harbor Point. We sold a half interest in the Addison. We also had a big development we'd started in Miami called Cocoa Plum. You ever heard of that? Coral Gables?
I think been reading all of this.
Big community development. It's one of my favorite things.
Yes.
It's where Chuck lives, too. And none of that was a conflict of interest. It was all done third hand and afterwards. And then Disney was watching us, and we didn't really know this. And so then Disney called us 6 months after we'd closed the deal at the end of '83. And then June of '84, I finally taken my first vacation in years, and I was out in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we did the McCormick Ranch, by the way. But not ARVIDA, but that was before me. For ARVIDA, I bought that piece of property. And I got a call from Chuck, and Chuck says, look, Disney guys had called us and said, Ray Watson, who ran the Irvine Ranch, who we got to know very well in California because we admired what he did, he somehow morphed and became the chairman of Disney. So he called us and said, look, we got 35,000 acres in Orlando, and you guys are the best developers in Florida. I know you well. And he said, look, can we do a joint venture? Because we got all this land, and our guys know how to, I don't think I'm embarrassing anybody, but he said, they know how to make movies, they know how to do theme parks, and they know how to chase movie stars. You don't have to put that in there. But anyway, it's kind of the different culture. It's the Hollywood culture. But they don't know anything about real estate. They don't know how to do a shopping center. We only got 2 hotels, the Contemporary. And so we need development talent. And we told Richard Rainwater, our angel, and he says, look, I got a better idea. I know Ray Watson. He calls Ray and says, Ray, he knew they were being raided by a guy named Sal Steinberg. And he says, why don't you just forget about doing this complicated joint venture with them and be co-developers with the ARVIDA guys? Why don't you just buy the company? So we ended up being
owned by
trading
Disney.
our shares, and the Bass Brothers became the largest shareholder at the time in Disney.
Huh. Interesting. So many twists and turns, John, over the years.
God. So but we said, so Chuck and I looked at each other and said, Chuck had ambition, went up. We started Disney Development Company. He was like the chairman of that. I was the president of that. And he got on the board at Disney. And we said, let's send some of our key guys up there to start a development company for him. And that's when Peter Rummel went, who maybe later on did the thing you talked about. And we took some of our other key guys, and we started building more hotels, started building shopping centers, started building golf courses, resorts, all the things that we did. But we kept ARVIDA separate. Mm. So finally, it wasn't shortly after we'd sold the company to Disney that they changed. They brought in Michael Eisner from Paramount, and they brought in Frank Wells from Turner. Not Turner. What's the other one? The other film company. They're really great guys. And they said, look, we got to turn this company around. And so we had 3-year contracts, which was okay. And I had some of the best time of my life because we helped. I didn't have to worry about money. They paid off all our debts. We became owners of Disney, and the Bass Brothers were thrilled to death. They loved us. Yeah. Made them the biggest shareholder in Disney. And how they went from there, I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. No. I'm bouncing around here, okay. But and if you want to do another interview with me, I'd be happy to have it more structured for you. But all this related to Boca Raton, because we then Penn Central, then Disney started looking at us and said, "Look, you put us in the real estate business. We've got this ARVIDA over here. We're not. It's great. I mean, we were both involved with each other, and then I got a call. I was actually out hunting. I'm going to write this part of it because Eisner's gone. He's there, but he's gone. Frank Wells was with. He passed away in a ski accident. But he and I became very close, and he's the one I really worked with. And so then I got a call from Michael, and I was out hunting. Actually, he didn't know that, so I sent my clothes to Hollywood. And he says, "What is it?" And he says, "Well, John, you're the real estate guy." I'm sitting at his desk. In Disney, everybody called each other by their first names, and I always called people by their first names anyway. And he says, "John," he said, "we got an offer for ARVIDA, and you're the real estate guy. And what do we do with it?" And I said, "Well, what do they offer you?" And he told me. And he had a can of film sitting at his desk amongst the other things. I said, "I'm a Disney shareholder. We got to take this deal." And he said, "You sure?" I said, "I'm absolutely sure. They're paying way, way, way too much for it." And he says, "Yeah, but the other good thing about it is they want you to continue to be head of it and run it for them. They really want you." It was JMB out of Chicago. I knew JMB too. Judelson happened to be a resident here. He left his partners a number of years ago, and I knew them pretty well. They're in the syndication business. They don't have any skin in the game there. So I said, "Look, I'll help you get it closed. I've got enough other key guys that we can give to you, because we work together as a team. I mean, Chuck and I always had the philosophy that we always hired people we thought were smarter than we were, because we were always secure about what we were doing, and so we had some really good people, and so they sold it, but I don't want to be part of that, because I said, "Michael," I said, when this thing doesn't work out, and it's not going to work out," he said, he handed me the film. He said, John, we sell films all the time for more than they're worth. I said, yeah, but I'm in a film can. I took my knuckle, I beat on a can or whatever. I had a pen in my hand. I said, I'm going to be in a can. So long story of that was, it took them 25 years. Shares went out at $1,000 a share. Finally, the investors got $1,000 a share back over 25 years, which is nothing. And I bought a bunch of land. I bought a bunch of it at $200 when it finally broke. I tried to get Lennar to partner up with me, but they didn't want to have a proxy fight with. And anyway, so I started my own company.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for your time today.
I'm sorry, I probably rambled on.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to think of more things about ARVIDA. So the way our Boca Raton, one of the things I did at the university was help them get more things that are for the kind of companies we had down here, which were originally IBM and IBM shoot-offs, and then others. Now a lot of financial companies in here. So the engineering school got built up even more. It became a 4-year college, and then Lynn became really, and ARVIDA had sold that land, but there were a lot of restrictions on it. And I work with the Ross family, and we got all this, and I think they did a great job. And that's been a real attraction down here. That's really helped the community. I probably rambled off enough for you.
That's okay. I think probably we've got enough for right now.
Okay. And if you want more, I'll be happy to tell it to you. And I'm in a process. A lot of it's in the book, but I concentrated more on community development. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the town, again, Broken Sound. Okay. So we're sitting around. It was. The PUD was Indian Trace. 2 other things. I'll talk about all the churches here too on Yamato. It's just another interesting story. One of the things we had to sell off some properties and do some other things because there was such a thing as they had a regional planning council. And one of the reasons we did develop Broken Sound, but one of the reasons we had to separate at Yamato from a lot of the developments north of there was that would have put us in a whole nother approval process. That was going to be very expensive, time-consuming, and bureaucratic as you couldn't believe. So the reason all those churches are lined up is that everybody wanted a church site, every religion, And so I said, look, we got to get rid of this piece of land here. It can be developed for residential, but we got all these churches, so why don't we just make it into in my family's life, they call it temples, whatever. So we said, let's put them all together. We're not going to make a plan out of it, and so we'll give them. Everybody wanted to buy a site and have us take back a mortgage. I said, no, we'll give them options. We'll be fair about the price. We'll give them options, and they raise the money, they can buy it. And I'm not going to. They can work out their own parking, their own. So it's some of my friends have it. They call it a name. I'll think of it later. Right now, I can't think of it. So that's why all the churches are there. And then Broken Sound was we were sitting around the table trying to say we don't want to call this Indian Trace. Indian Trace was actually the name of Weston property before we started. Was way out at 84 and 41. It's underwater, or it's in the Everglades. And I said, I don't like that name, and none of us like that name. We're sitting around, and somebody said, one of them was a golfer. He was actually managed the sales operation at Boca West, and he said, what about Broken Sound? And I said, well, what does that mean? Well, at the time you hit a golf ball. I'm not a great golfer. I played enough to be able to manage, a lot of golf course developments. There's a break, sound travel. I mean, light faster than sound.
Right.
There's a delay between the time you hit the ball and the time you hear it, and that's called the broken sound. So I said, that's a great name. So that's where it comes from.
Very interesting.
And then the golf course out there, that's part of the Park of Commerce, came because we only had room for one golf course in Broken Sound. We wanted to change that, make it more, make it less of a resort community and more of a primary home community. Okay, bigger mix of more primary home. And so we had a group at the hotel, at the club at the hotel, we were getting squeezed out because when we had our conventions and things, they didn't have any place to go, so they were threatening to go out and buy a piece of land, and so we made a deal with them. And we built in it was a very low part of that land. It was going to be a real process, and so that's how. And then that was eventually incorporated in Broken Sound.
All right. Well, I think we're going to stop now because you have so much to share, and you've shared an awful lot, and I thank you for your time. And
Trying to think of anything else.
I
can. Yeah.
Well, they should probably have you back for the second round.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place,
No,
but
no.
if you read my book,
Yes.
and again, I did it primarily because, and the one thing I kind of said, I think I said it at the end, but I spent 4 years in the Navy, and I got my dolphins here. I'm a submariner.
Yeah. Oh.
And people asked me and said, what was the most important thing you did? Get your math, physics at University of Washington, or was it ARVIDA, or was it, what was it? I said it was being a naval officer. I was NROTC, naval officer for 2 years in destroyers based in Japan. First time they'd ever relocated a group of men of war to Japan because we were patrolling Taiwan Straits. But I always wanted to be a submariner. So I had to do that. I had to be qualified fully on destroyers to go to submarine school. And then submarine school, I just wanted to earn my dolphins. I was on Rickover's pick list, and he handpicked people to interview. And I said, I'm not ready yet. I want to go serve on a boat, decide what I'm going to do. I was thinking maybe I'd go back to graduate school. So it wasn't Stanford. It wasn't anything. It was my 4 years of being a naval officer where I had to manage people. And I had to, that's the toughest thing. And so, yeah, Stanford was very good to me. And it's a great school. But
well, thank you for your service to our country. It's very much appreciated.
And to finish that, unbeknownst to me, it was about the time that nuclear was really coming into vogue. But to get into nuclear power school with Rickover, you had to serve. You had to go through nuclear power school, and I want to be on a boat first. You couldn't get on right out of school, or right out of and so we got at Code 5 in the Cuban Missile Crisis. I happened to had my first pick of boats. Doesn't mean I was first in my class because there was maybe 20 other guys that I was mingled up with, and the other 120 didn't get the opportunity. And so I picked a boat, which was in Charleston, South Carolina, and it had gone through the latest conversion of a diesel-electric boat. We were the quietest boat in the ocean. And then when they had Code 5 for the Cuban Missile Crisis, we didn't even anticipate this. We were the first boat deployed to go off Russia, and signaled back to Khrushchev, was pounding his shoe on the table, signaled back to him that they sending out patrol craft and sonobuoys and planes and everything they could, because we were on a snorkel hidden, during the, just lift the pipe out of the water. And they couldn't find us, and we signaled back and said that Khrushchev was bluffing, and then Khrushchev had a lot of other things that happened, or not he did, but Kennedy did. I think he was embarrassed over the Bay of Pigs because he screwed that up. And he stopped those missile boats from coming down here. So we were on the front line.
You've had an amazing life, John, an amazing life. Thank you so much for your time.